get started. So I'm Charlotte Robinson, the president of the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce, and I'm pleased to serve as your moderator this evening. Welcome to the Candidates Forum for the Thunder Bay Superior North, followed by Thunder Bay Rainy River ridings. If you are using social media tonight, please use the hashtag TBayDebate. The issues that are discussed here tonight affect our community, and it's important that you have an opportunity to hear the views of the candidates and their parties in order to make an informed decision on Election Day, October 21st. The order of speaking has been determined by draw, and the questions will rotate from stage left to right. The questions will be posed to the candidates by the panelists. Each of the candidates will have 60 seconds for their answer, and then the receiving candidate will have 30 seconds to rebut. The candidates will only be able to speak within the allocated time. We do have notice cards that will be shown when 10 seconds remain. Call and put your, so you know where you're looking. And then when the time is up, there is a red card and we will cut you off and move on. I do remind the candidates that they have pledged to be respectful, to not engage in name calling, and to not interrupt each other when speaking. The candidates will not use inappropriate language and will listen to me. And the audience is also asked to please remain quiet while the candidates are speaking, but you are welcome to applaud at the end of each candidate's response. So our panelists tonight, we have Bonnie Crisawati, the social researcher for the Lakehead Social Planning Council, Jason Racevich, president of the Anishinaabe Business Professionals Association, Dr. Charles Levko, Canada Research Chair in Sustainable Food Systems, and Nathan Lawrence, Chair of the Board from the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce. Our first forum is the candidates for the Thunder Bay Superior North riding, and we will start with 1-minute opening statements by each candidate, beginning with candidate Poulia.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Frank Poulia and I'm running to be your next Member of Parliament to help realize the amazing potential of our region that currently has one of the lowest growth rates in the country. We can and should be doing better. What we're hearing at the door is that our citizens do not want the politics of scandals, fear, and division of the Trudeau's liberals, but a clear plan on how to make life more affordable, create jobs, protect the environment, as well as health care and social programs. We need Made in the North solutions, so that FedNor does not allow ministerial bureaucrats to turn down local applications like those of Terrace Bay Marathon for internet broadband that are vital for the regional economy. We need an MP and a government that supports and not attacks small businesses that create 80% of the jobs. We need to protect jobs like those of Bombardier through cooperation and less finger pointing. Real progress to open up the Ring of Fire requires a new level of collaboration with the province,
Your time's up,
Indigenous leaders, First Nation, and municipalities, and I will do that. Thank you.
We're going to move on to Anna Betty. You have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anna Betty Achnebaneshkam, and I'm proud to sit before you as the NDP candidate for Thunder Bay Superior North. I am originally from a small community on the Albany River that's called Martin Falls First Nation. I have been a resident of Thunder Bay for the last 33 years. I have raised my family here, and I have made great efforts to contribute to the well-being and to the safety of our community, which includes promoting the well-being of our children and safety for all citizens, no matter what ethnic group that we are in, because we are all residents of this city and of this region. I've had the honor of traveling to the communities and to the municipalities within our region, and there's always one thing that is common, and that is affordability to survive.
And that's your time, Anna Betty. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to Youssef.
Hi, my name is Youssef Kanjori with the People's Party of Canada. I'm a fourth-year student. Some of you may know me. I joined the People's Party of Canada because I feel like I think we can all agree that we've reached a crisis point in Canada. There's many amenities and things that we've come to enjoy that are becoming increasingly expensive, increasingly untenable. The job market in northwestern Ontario is completely drying up as people move out of the area. And I joined the People's Party because I feel that we're going to start attacking the actual causes of problems instead of putting Band-Aids on solutions. And so I'd like to focus on making life more affordable for all Canadians, as well as bringing back the jobs that have been slowly moving out of this region. So I'm Yusuf Kanjori for the People's Party of Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusuf. We'll move on to Patty.
Thank you, Charlotte. In 2015, I was elected to bring change, and for too long, we had been left out of the role. Since then, I've been able to put our region on the map, and we've seen investments that are focused on making sure that everyone has a fair chance to succeed. Strong communities depend on decent work, affordable housing, and access to training.
You got shut off. There you go.
Children that grow up free of poverty become the employers, entrepreneurs, and great innovators of the future. But it's not enough to simply have a job. People need to have a reason to live in the North and stay in the North. That's why investments in schools, culture, seniors, recreation, and housing matter so much. And that's why a conservative vision of cuts and austerity is especially harmful to the North. From Manitouwadge to Gull Bay, Greenstone to Marathon, Beatagong to Rocky Bay, I've traveled every mile of this riding. And everywhere I go, I meet determined, positive people fighting for the North. We can't cut our way to prosperity. We have a strong and realistic plan to protect our environment, grow our economy, and strengthen the middle class. Together, let's choose forward.
Thank you, Patty. And now to Alexander, please.
My name's Alex Vauden. I work for a small mining contractor called Manrock Developments. First off, I'd like to add my most sincere appreciation for everyone who took time from their busy schedules to be here today. I believe this nation is at a defining point. We still have Canadians in the Middle East. We are still fighting unemployment and watching Canadian corporations and companies take their business elsewhere. We are fighting to keep a struggling healthcare system afloat and battling an ever-changing climate. It is times like these where we have to ask ourselves, is this a matter of left or right, conservative or liberal? For me, it's simple. It's a matter of forwards or back. Do we continue down an unsustainable path, or do we march forward to blaze a bright new trail for our nation and the great constituency of the North Shore? I hope I can be the one to help the North reach its full potential.
Thank you, Alexander. And our final opening statement from Bruce. Please begin your 1 minute.
I'm a biologist and forester. I was a high school science department chair, university professor in land use and park planning, an Ontario environmental judge, and entrepreneur with 3 corporations and 8 wilderness lodges. I know how to balance a budget. As your MP for 7 years, I worked across party lines to get things done. 6 out of 7 years, more federal dollars came to Thunder Bay Superior North than any Northern Ontario riding. I helped to write the Green Party platform, 90 pages of online addressing everything from the climate crisis to the housing policy, and it's fully costed. Unlike most MPs, I am not interested in being merely a customer sales rep for my party in Thunder Bay. There's important work to be done for you in Parliament. I have a proven record of putting you ahead of any party, and I will get things done for Northwestern Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. So we will now begin with our questions. And the first question is to Frank Puglia and will be asked by Bonnie from the Lakehead Social Planning Council.
Basic income pilot projects, including the one in Thunder Bay, have demonstrated that the income security provided by a basic income reduces poverty and increases the social determinants of health for people. When the provincial government terminated the pilot, the impacts on local participants were profound. The participants were hoping to break the cycle of poverty, enhance employment opportunities, stabilize housing, eat healthier, and improve their physical health. Would your party support a universal guaranteed minimum income in Canada for all Canadians? And if so, how?
Frank?
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. Basic income pilot project. I support it when it was first introduced as a great way to stabilize the lives of those who need that kind of help so they can go back to school, they can become productive members of society by not having to worry about the cyclical nature of getting a job, especially if they're not have the basic to get ahead. Some people went back to school and they were ready to graduate when the program was canceled. I think that was wrong. They should have at least waited for that program to be completed to see if it works, if it doesn't. I believe that it does work, and I would support that and bring it forward to the Conservative Party to make sure that we can do our part in supporting the people that need our help, especially through a basic income program.
Thank you. And the same question to Anna Betty. You have 1 minute. It's on. It should be on.
Thank you for that question. I believe that particular pilot project was very beneficial and created some hope for certain individuals, not only in this city, but other parts of this province. And it represented a stepping stone and provided income for those that were, at a stage in their life where they were struggling, and they needed that extra assistance. And we need to create those opportunities for individuals to return to school or to provide some other type of on-the-job training and other life skills. And our NDP will, we have always fought for the people, and we will make sure that we provide an income source so that we can.
Thank you. That is your time. Thanks, Anna Betty. Next, the question to Youssef.
Hi, thanks for the question. I find that the interesting part of the pilot program wasn't the good it did, but more of exposing the bad that's in our system. The fact that currently in Canada we have such a problem where if you start out with simply $0, you can't move anywhere. You need to have something in order to start with something. It's incredibly troubling that we've got to this point that the poorest Canadians can't even get anywhere in making a living. I think it's a good thing to point out that the People's Party is currently the only party who is completely mandated to eliminating all taxes on the poor, because I think that simply taxing the poor when they're in the state that they're already in and with the system that is already set up is simply untenable. And thank you.
Thank you, Youssef. Patty.
Thank you very much. Listen, this government's been working extensively on poverty, whether it's raising Canada Child benefit rates to the point where we've lifted 300,000 children out of poverty, whether it's a $55 billion national housing strategy, whether it's an actual poverty strategy that's reaching targets 3 years ahead of time, whether it's ensuring that people have access to skills training in equitable ways all across the country. This government has been focused on making sure everyone has a fair chance to succeed. Basic income already exists in all of the provinces. It's called social assistance, it's called ODSP, and I would definitely advocate that we would activate together to work against cuts that the Ford government has been inflicting on some of the most vulnerable in the province. This is happening across the system in provincial governments, where cuts to ODSP, cuts to OW, cuts to living wages, cuts to minimum wage are affecting people's ability to actually elevate themselves out of poverty.
Thank you, Patty. Alex?
Thank you for the question first. And on the topic of basic incomes, I do believe in a basic income. I do not believe that in the next 4 years we will be able to put up a basic income. In my personal opinion, a basic income is something that all people get, regardless of their financial situation. It is money for everybody. With the future and automation coming up on us quickly, I believe that soon we'll be able to tax these automations, and then we'll be able to have a basic income. But as for the next 4 years, I do not believe a basic income is feasible. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And Bruce, your thoughts on this question?
The Green Party does believe in a guaranteed livable income. It's in our platform. Google it. If we can afford $13 billion for a pipeline to export raw crude dilbit to China, to export jobs and pollution, we can afford one of the wealthiest countries in the entire world to make sure every person has the rights to life. Sweden has an expression, all of Sweden must live. And what they mean is that every person in Sweden has the same opportunities, the same ability to be healthy, happy, well-fed, well-clothed. We can do it here. The root cause of addictions, of crime, of health, both physical and mental problems, is basically poverty. We must do something about it. We have gaps in income which are getting closer and closer to those in the U.S. It's absolutely unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And so now, Frank, you have 30 seconds to make any final points to that question. 30 seconds, Frank.
Hello, is it on? Yeah. Okay. When the basic income was taken away, there was a group of people that went to my liberal opponent office and asked if the federal government would help, but the answer was no. I support because we can reduce other programs because they can collapse into one, reduce bureaucracy through collaboration with the province. I met the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction last week. I will work with him to bring those positive results to Thunder Bay.
Thank you, Frank. And that completes the first question. Thanks, everybody. A round of applause, guys. You're so quiet. So our next question is from Jason. Jason, and it will be starting with Anna Betty. So Jason, your question.
Miigwech, I just want to first begin by acknowledging the site of our event here today in the traditional territory of Fort William First Nation and the Indigenous people of Robinson Superior Treaty. My question for the candidates are, what is your party's position on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and the plan to harmonize it with Canadian legislation?
Thank you, Jason. And Anna Betty, you have the first 1-minute response.
Thank you very much, Jason, for that question, and also to an acknowledgement to the Anishinaabe people of Fort William First Nation. As you know, as many of you know, it was our NDP Member of Parliament, Romeo Shaganash, who had pushed for UNDRIP to become legislation within this country. And we are one of the very last few countries to acknowledge that particular declaration. And the NDP will be very firm to making this a priority. And it's very essential in terms of reconciliation and ensuring that each of our citizens, no matter who they are treated fairly.
Thank you, Anna Betty. Yusuf, you're up next. 1 minute, please.
Thank you for the question. So, for the People's Party's stance on this, we need to start looking at opening up the old laws that were in the past founded by openly racist people. We are looking at a more respected, more free, and much more fair treatment of Indigenous people in Canada. And we have to really get rid of the stains and problems in the past that our government has inflicted on them with no cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusuf. Patty?
Well, thank you. Absolutely. The Prime Minister is committed to implementing UNDRIP in its fullest form. And as a matter of fact, yes, MP Saganash introduced the legislation and our government supported it and got it through the House of Commons, where it sat in the Senate and was killed by Conservative senators who refused to move it forward, and it died because the House rose. That's the story of UNDRIP. And so for my Conservative candidate to say whatever he thinks he feels about Indigenous people or about universal basic income actually negates the behavior of his party. In fact, the Conservative Party has stood in the way and voted against every single measure that we have put forward to improve the lives of Indigenous peoples, to work more collaboratively with Indigenous peoples, and to resource share with Indigenous peoples. And that's the way forward, quite frankly. We cannot move this country forward if not all of us are moving together. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Alexander?
Thank you for the question again. And Canada has a history of failed assimilation and just all-around poor treatment of its Indigenous people. We here at the Libertarian Party, and absolutely to answer the question, we would definitely follow those recommendations. But we'd like to go a step farther and give them similar jurisdictions and powers similar to that of our provincial governments. We'd like to really enforce the sovereignty of the treaty lands and continue forward as them making their own decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And Bruce?
UNDRIP is in the Green Party platform. We support it, and we have for very many years, not recently. I'm an immigrant. Most of the people in this room are immigrants or the descendants of immigrants. The First Nations people welcomed us into this land to share it with them, and we have not shared adequately or fairly. The other thing I'd like to say, I've said it before, I'd like to say it again. It's not just a matter of treaty rights, and it's very much a matter of human rights, but it's also a matter of practicality and self-interest for our region. If First Nations people do well, we are all going to do well. If First Nation people do not do well, none of us is going to do well. We all have to paddle this canoe together in the same direction in rhythm and cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And Frank, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. The Liberals said they will adopt it, but nothing has happened for the last 4 years, other than setting up some committees to review it. But let's talk about the dismissive attitude that Trudeau has shown towards the Indigenous people, especially a community activist for Grass and Arrows, when she asked what would it take to get help from the current government. And he said, thank you for your donation. Everybody has seen that on TV, has made the rounds. So we should be careful when we point the finger at others, because the Conservative Party, and especially myself, have always worked with Indigenous people to bring practical solutions to their lives for safe water, for economic opportunity, because reconciliation does not just, we don't just talk about it, we act on it and make it happen through positive results. I just came back from the Wabakwe Supply Road project with Victoria Inn, and we talked about this. And respect the rights to say yes is also important to make that economic reconciliation happen.
Thank you, Frank. And Anna Betty, you have 30 seconds if you would like to say anything further on this topic. It's on, yeah, we're just leaving it on.
Okay, thank you very much. The only statement I would like to say at this time is that if the Liberal government had been very serious about building the relationship and including supporting UNDRIP, they would have also not appealed the case of the Caring Society under Dr. Cindy Blackstock, and that in itself is a statement of not being fair to Indigenous people.
Thank you, Anna Betty. So I just want to remind the folks in the audience, if you could please turn your ringers off on your cell phones, that would be much appreciated. And also to the candidates, make sure that you're speaking into the mic throughout the entire response to the questions so we can hear everything you have to say. Now moving on to Charles from the Food Strategy for your question, which will be starting with a response from Youssef. So Charles?
Right. So changes in our climate impact the most vulnerable communities in Canada and beyond, and especially First Nations communities. They are having a serious impact on our food systems, our agriculture, fisheries, forests, and freshwater foods. Currently, discussions and actions about flooding, drought, fires across our region have not adequately tied the climate emergency to these issues, and little is being done at any level of government to address these issues. How will your party plan to address the climate emergency, and especially the negative impact that's having on our food systems that will impact the most vulnerable people in our community?
Thank you. Youssef, you have 1 minute.
So on the climate emergency, there is a bit of a misnomer that the climate emergency is purely a carbon-based problem, and as such, the government has sought to put a Band-Aid on it by creating more taxes on the people more in the name of a carbon tax. But when you look at the actual problems, it's not carbon in the air, it's mercury in the water, it's methane coming out from fracking, it's all sorts of other problems. There's plastic in the water coming from places like India and China, which are completely unrestricted. There are so many problems that aren't being addressed, and I find that often the government is acting as if they're making plans for it, but merely they're just making excuses for more taxes. So as the People's Party, we need to start addressing actual infringements on our environment. We need to start addressing other countries who are infringing on our environment as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Youssef. Patty.
Well, thank you. Listen, our party knows that climate change is real. We also believe scientists that say that carbon emissions are a clear reason why climate change is real. We have a comprehensive plan to protect the climate. We've been investing in clean technology, supporting that transition for transportation and all of the other ways that we use energy. We've invested in public transit. We've put a price on pollution with a rebate for Canadians so that the transition to a clean economy is affordable. We're the only party that has a real and affordable plan, a practical plan, and the next steps is to get to net zero by 2050 with legislated targets, ensuring that people have the supports to help transition their families, their houses, their vehicles. And by the way, we're 75% of the way to reaching our Paris target. So we've done a lot in 4 years, and we've had a lot of accomplishments that we need to build on and continue on.
Thank you very much. Alex?
We believe that with the right free market system, it matters like the environment. Canadians are naturally benevolent. We're good people. We're all great people. And we believe that we will push corporations to providing greener solutions by allowing them to act more freely. For instance, we look at electric cars, right? If everyone here was not financially hindered, I'm sure there would be plenty of electric car buyers. But the fact of the matter is, it's outside of the normal price scope of the average Canadian. Bruce.
Thank you very much. And Bruce?
We definitely have a climate change emergency. We Canadians are #1 in the world per capita for production of greenhouse gases. We need to show leadership. I introduced and passed the only climate change bill ever passed in the House of Commons in 2012. If Harper had not killed it in the Senate, we would next year have had a 25% reduction in greenhouse gases instead of the increase that we've seen under the Liberals. Trudeau and the Liberals have been climate hypocrites, voting to declare a climate emergency one day and the very next day buying a pipeline to export raw crude and jobs to communist China. They have rubber-stamped Harper's inadequate targets and haven't even met those. The only way the Liberals will ever keep their promises on almost anything is if we have a minority government with lots of NDP and Green MPs to keep them
Bruce.
honest.
Thank you, Bruce. Frank?
Yes, the question was food strategy within the context of climate emergency. And the agricultural sector is one of the largest employer in our region, 1,700 people. We need to support it, including the local food supply, especially for First Nation remote communities. And our plan in protecting the environment has 3 components: green technology, no taxes. Companies were required to invest in emissions reducing technology. A cleaner, greener, natural environment that comes into play with your question, protecting our fisheries, forests, agricultural lands, tourist areas, and millions of good jobs in this industry, including First Nation communities, and taking the climate change globally to reduce global emissions while we create green tech jobs in the region. Thank you for that question, because it was...
Thank you, Frank. Anna Betty.
Thank you very much. First of all, I know how it is. I have lived in a remote community, and I realize the cost of living and also the cost of heating our homes. And the NDP is very aware of this, and we would ensure that we move forward on providing energy efficient for our homes and infrastructure within our Indigenous communities and other municipalities that also require this, and providing funding for farming and other agricultural initiatives, and also for recycling. Like, we need to support those processes within all throughout the province, and we also need to.
Thank you, Anna Betty. Thank you. Youssef, you now have 30 seconds to make a few final comments on this question.
Okay, thank you. So, as I was saying, with everyone's talking about just more emission caps, more taxes on everything, we need to start addressing the fact that the average person can't afford these expensive things. We need to start making these things more affordable. We need to start focusing on actually going after the people who are causing these problems, and we need to start addressing the real problems: mercury, methane, other poisons in the waters, plastics, instead of just pretending it's carbon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Youssef, and thank you all for your responses to that question. We'll now move on to our next question from Nathan at the Chamber of Commerce, and the first response will be to Patty. Nathan.
Countries around the world have recognized the rail industry as a strategic one. While highly competitive and globalized jurisdictions throughout Europe and Asia foster and promote their rail champions through various mechanisms, such as local content and innovative procurement frameworks, in Canada, we seem to be bucking an international trend, as recent and major rail projects have been outsourced to the US, India, and China, using our tax dollars to create jobs and expertise elsewhere. How will your party ensure a strong rail transportation industry in Canada, and how will it use existing tools at its disposal, such as local content requirements, to create jobs at home and provide the best value for our tax dollars?
Thank you. Patty?
Well, thank you, Nathan, and I think your question is getting at the question of what's happening in Bombardier. Listen, we either are going to be a trading nation and have agreements with the United States, which, by the way, we sell 70% of our goods to, with Asia, with Europe. In fact, we're the only G7 country that has trading agreements with all other 7 countries in the G7. Those are important things. They allow us to grow our exports. They allow us to grow our businesses. They allow us to export our goods. And so part of those trade agreements are content agreements. Of course, at the provincial level, there is no limit to how much a province can demand is created locally. And that's why we encourage the province of Ontario and Doug Ford to get back to work. Because in fact, they could set as high as 100% Ontario content requirements if they wished. They could also have a plan for transit. They could also figure out who's going to run transit. Is it the province of Ontario or is it the city of Toronto? And so I'll continue to advocate to make sure that those jobs stay here, but I will also ensure that we have a strong trading agreements with international partners so that all of our businesses can grow.
Thank you, Patty. Alex?
On the topic of Bombardier, the Libertarian government would not support any industry that requires corporate welfare. And Bombardier has not, well, this year they turned a profit, so maybe they will survive this. But for 5 years before that, they have not turned a profit. Via Rail is the same thing. Unfortunately, rail in Canada does not seem to be doing very well. And It's as simple as that. I mean, if it's not economically viable, it's not economically viable. We shouldn't be dumping money into dead ends. Bruce.
Thank you, Alex. Bruce?
I think many of you know that I've been a rail champion for long over a decade. If you go to brucehired.ca, I have a very long report on how to restore via rail to the North Shore and through Thunder Bay. We need to invest both locally and long distance. We need to invest in local transit, and we believe, and eventually we need to have free local transit everywhere in Canada. We need long-distance rail between regions and between provinces, and we must restore via rail. And we can build all those cars right here in Thunder Bay with Bombardier. We need the federal and provincial governments to stop finger-pointing about whose fault it is. It's the province's fault. It is the Liberals' fault. It is the Conservatives' fault. And it's somewhat Bombardier management's fault. But it's not the workers' fault. So we need to invest in those cars here in Thunder Bay and create the jobs of the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank? Frank?
Thank you. We need to protect jobs, retain those jobs like Bombardier, good paying jobs, because if losing those will be detrimental to our region. The Liberal attacks to the provincial government to shore up their political fortunes are going to be causing major problems for the future. There are $23.5 billion of rail infrastructure already allocated in the GTA for the next 13 years. In collaboration between the federal and the provincial government, we need to sit at the table and make sure that we not only increase the local Canadian content to compete with the Americans, but be able to bring those jobs here. I will make that a priority. And by the way, it was the Liberal government under the Liberal watch that we lost $1 billion contract to Siemens in California. And nothing was said, nothing was done. It's under their watch. And that speaks for itself.
Thank you, Frank. Anna Betty?
Thank you very much for that question. First of all, I believe that that the railways that we have out in our region are an opportunity for transportation and to address some of the issues that you have that we spoke about here today, including climate, and it also is will provide jobs. I met with the employees at Bombardier, and I was quite empathetic to their concerns. And why is it that our people here in this city, they have the skills, there's infrastructure there, so why aren't they the ones building the trains? Thank you.
Thank you. Youssef.
Thank you for the question. I think it's, again, it's going to be a trend of me saying this. We need to start focusing on why the jobs are leaving in the first place. Why is it that America is starting to outcompete us? Why is it that companies are needing all this corporate welfare and then not being held to account? It has simply become untenable to do business in Canada. Under the Liberals, even last year, we had an increase for Canadian-owned businesses, not for international businesses, oddly, though, but for Canadian-owned businesses, they had a tax increase in 2019. It's become increasingly difficult for companies to turn a profit now, and with all of that, they're starting to now ask for welfare from the government. The People's Party is going to start holding people accountable exactly like with Bombardier, where they asked for money to not lay people off, and then they laid people off anyway, so that it was an abject failure. We need to start looking at reducing the cost of business in Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Youssef. And Patty, you have 30 seconds for any further comments on this question about a rail strategy.
Well, thank you. The Liberal government put forward a $180 billion infrastructure program over the next 10 years. to create jobs, to create the infrastructure that we need, to help provinces and territories and municipalities build the infrastructure of today and tomorrow. And what we see is a province of Ontario dragging their heels and leaving billions of dollars on the table to make a political point. That's not good for the province, that's not good for the community, and that is not good for workers.
Thank you very much. And so I think it's going to be our final question before closing statements will be from Bonnie, and the first response will be from Alex. Bonnie, your question.
Thanks. An estimated 235,000 different Canadians will experience homelessness this year at an estimated economic cost of $7 billion per year. In Thunder Bay, based on the 2018 enumeration of homeless individuals, it was reported that at least 474 people were experiencing homelessness, and we know this is a gross undercount. The District of Thunder Bay Social Services Administration Board first quarter operational report shows that emergency shelter use for the chronically homeless individuals in Thunder Bay has been at capacity, sometimes even double, for the past 3 years. What would your party do to expedite the process to end homelessness based on its critical nature and epidemic numbers in some cities like Thunder Bay and the staggering numbers associated with chronic homelessness?
Thank you. Alex.
So that's a really good question. The Thunder Bay has some of the most affordable housing in Canada. So to me, the question isn't so much homelessness as it is inability to purchase homes. This can be tied to a lot of things, but I think in homelessness, it largely, and not completely, but largely is due to substance abuse. Now the Liberals put forward a lot of great programs to help with substance abuse, but it doesn't address the issue, and that is that these people, these victims, and that's what they are victims of substance abuse, are still being prosecuted as criminals. Now, why, if you are a victim and you are made to be a criminal, why would you turn to the government that has made you a criminal for help?
Thank you, Alex. Bruce?
Homelessness is a large and a growing problem. It doesn't have to be. To reiterate, the Green Party believes in a guaranteed livable income that will help a lot. The federal government needs to invest in low-cost housing again. They need a housing strategy again. We need to change our banking system so that everyone has access to affordable capital spending like mortgages for housing. We need to increase the amortization period back up to 30 years again, and we need to have subsidies, help for first-time home buyers with low incomes guaranteed by the federal government. And the last thing I'd like to mention is we need, as we did in the 70s, to reinvest in co-op housing. Castle Green Housing Co-op is a great example of what we did well and we should do again. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Frank?
Given that the problem still persists, one has to ask why, after 4 years of Liberals in government, this issue has not been resolved, or at least attempted to be resolved. Whatever has been put forward is not working, because one is a complex issue that needs to go to the social determinants of health. And Medicine Hat was able to almost eliminate homelessness through the collaboration of the federal, provincial, municipal government. If our federal government continues to attack the provinces, would you think they're going to sit at the table and collaborate when they're the ones who are pointing the finger instead of looking for solutions? It requires that kind of approach. And also we need to bring everybody, the federal, provincial, municipal, and Indigenous leaders and communities at the table to find suitable solutions. Collaboration is going to be key, and I look forward to be able, if elected, to go and move in that direction.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Anna?
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, we have to look at the issues as to why those individuals may be homeless. And there's a lot of reasons. It's not just addictions. There is in this country there is a lack of affordable housing, and so the NDP would ensure that we would support processes such as the co-op housing industry, Habitat for Humanity, and also to ensure that we invest more into resources for our youth who are aging out of the child welfare system, because they say that 3 out of 5 under the age of 25 of those that are homeless are children that are youth that are aging out of the child welfare system. So, we need to ensure that we invest more into providing services for them. And we need to invest more into our shelters to, build those skills so that people transition.
Thank you so much, Anna. Youssef?
Hopefully I can get everything I want to talk about here. One of my best friends spent most of his life homeless, so I find it incredibly absurd that the idea that it's substance abuse to blame for the massive homelessness problem that we've been seeing under the last couple years. Under both governments, we've seen an increase in homelessness, not decrease. It is becoming completely untenable now. As students, they can't afford their first house, and not just it's at all levels of the income market. People are finding that they can't sell their houses. People find that they can't buy them. We have to start addressing these problems. It's at all spectrums of the market. We need to start putting money back into the nonprofits who go out and address these problems. We need to start focusing on the costs that are coming in for first-time buyers, and we need to start supporting people who don't have anything so that they can get off their feet and start off with. Thank you.
Thank you. Patty?
Well, thank you. After a decade of Harper ignoring some of the most vulnerable people in our community, we finally have a national housing strategy and right to housing legislation and $55 billion to fund it. We have partnerships with the provinces. We have co-investment funds that go directly to municipalities and organizations. Anyone who wants to apply to build housing can actually do so directly with the federal government. That's why the Salvation Army got $3 million for their transitional housing, because they applied. Our office assisted to make sure that their application was successful. We renewed the co-ops for Superior View and Castle Green Co-op. We have provided support to maintain the affordable units that we have in our system, like the units that are affordable through the DSAB. And finally, in 2020, we'll have a portable housing benefit that people can take with them so they have more choice in where they live. Thank you.
And Alex, would you like 30 seconds for any further comments on that topic? You're good? Okay. Hey, I like that. No, you can't. So that concludes our questions. So we will now move to the closing statements, and there will be 1 minute for each candidate to make a closing statement, and we'll start in reverse order. So Bruce, you can have your first minute, please.
When I was your MP here for 7 years, I introduced more bills and motions, 30 of them, than all the previous MPs from this riding ever, including Patty. I created the Lake Superior National Marine Conservation Area along with $21 million to fund it. I unlocked your cell phones. I passed my Climate Change Accountability Act in a minority government, and a minority is coming again. Parties are not mentioned anywhere in our Constitution. But in 1970, Pierre Trudeau amended the Elections Act to put party names onto the ballot. In the fine print, it said that candidates can't run unless the leader signs their nomination papers. Instantly, Pierre had his MPs under his thumb and soon called his own Liberal MPs mere trained seals. The Green Party is the only party that does not whip their MPs. If elected, I will put you ahead of any party.
Thank you, Bruce. Alex, you have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Again, I'd like to thank everyone for allowing me to be here, as well as thank our panelists and our moderator for their time tonight. Looking at global trends, I think we all know Canada and the world has some tough times ahead of it. The continued inability to provide a free market where businesses can grow and flourish without government bias will cause irreparable damage to our economy and our nation. That's why the biggest risk we can take right now is to adopt the same tired policies and the same failed politics that have misrepresented Canadian interests for years. It is time to choose a path. It is time to choose forward, and it is time to choose prosperity for the North Shore. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Alex. I agree. It is time to choose forward. And over the Listen, over the past 4 years as Member of Parliament and Cabinet Minister, I've worked hard to deliver on the things that you told me 4 years ago would make our region and our country stronger. And all across the region, I've delivered success for our communities, whether it's water treatment or housing, support for economic development. I've worked hard to ensure that our region gets the attention and the investments that we deserve. And we now have a Northern Ontario growth strategy with a $50 million boost for FedNor. And we've funded big projects like Watay Power and the East-West Tie that will help our region grow even more. Our government's smart investments have led to the lowest unemployment rate across Canada in 40 years, even here. Small businesses have a lower tax rate, stimulating our increasingly diverse economy. We've doubled down on affordable education, funding Lakehead and Confederation College. Listen, during the Harper years, Northern Ontario wasn't even on the map. But the Prime Minister has visited Thunder Bay 4 times over the past years. Returning to austerity and cuts won't grow our economy. Only choosing forward will.
Thank you. Youssef?
There's been a lot of finger pointing back and forth currently through the debate. A lot of people have forgotten that they were in power during that time, so I don't know what they're talking about. There's been a lot of talk about putting more money into different things, and people need to start looking and questioning at why these problems have suddenly become such a big issue in the first place due to mismanagement in previous years. We need to start going after the actual causes of problems to start eliminating them. We need to start looking at making life more affordable for every single Canadian, especially in Northwestern Ontario, because that's one of the things I hear most of all, that life has simply become unaffordable, it's untenable. And we need to start focusing on Canada First policies. We need to argue better with Trump, we need to argue better with the UN, we need to argue better with China. So we need to start putting Canada first. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna Betty.
First of all, thank each and every one of you for being here this evening. And it wasn't too long ago where I was sitting where you are now, and I know that you are here because you care about your families and about your future, and so do I. And that is why I'm sitting here. So I want to thank each and every one of you. And you know, as I represent integrity. I represent hard work. Like I worked really hard to get a lot of things done, not only for my family, but with any initiative that I was working on. And you know, I truly believe in the platform of the NDP, and we're the only party that has our Northern platform, because we know and recognize that in the North we have specific and unique needs. And you know, I would rather see the billions of dollars that have been distributed to large corporations like here to sustain our economy.
Thank you, Anna Betty.
And thank you very much.
Frank.
I'm running to champion the people of Thunder Bay Superior North so that they can get ahead, not just get by. Making life more affordable is one of the first priorities. By a universal tax cut that will give back about $800 per couple, tax-free parental leave to help young families, up to $3,800 in tax credits for making your home more energy efficient, eliminating the carbon tax to reduce your cost of living because there are better ways to protect the environment, and a tax-free home heating. We'll create jobs by investing in workforce training and development, and economic diversification by investing and nurturing in a technology north cluster, local solution to our local needs, and made in the north job creation solution. We'll protect the environment by green technology and not taxes, a cleaner, greener, natural environment, and taking the climate change globally because we can help. We have the know-how, the technology to help the world reduce greenhouse emissions. We need safer communities. I'm up.
You're
Health
up.
and social program.
Thank you, Frank. So that went quick, and that concludes the Thunder Bay Superior North Candidates Forum. Please give your candidates a round of applause for a great job tonight. So we will now take a short break to set up for the Thunder Bay Rainy River debate. I'll ask all those candidates to come forward, and we'll get started with